maybe you're not happy with the current state of your FPL team, or with all these double game week announcements and blank game weeks coming up, you're looking to play your wildcard. Well, stick with me and I've got a wildcard draft to talk you through. Okay, before we get into all of the players, I think it's just worth a quick reminder of what all these double and blank game weeks look like in the near term. So double game week 23 features both Arsenal and Man City. Arsenal playing Brentford and Man City playing Villa and Arsenal. Very sensible, really, in my opinion, to try and triple up on both Arsenal and Man City if you're wildcarding in 23. Now, next up, we got the teams that double in game week 25. That's Arsenal, Liverpool, Wolves and Everton. For me, I'm really only interested in Arsenal and Liverpool players. Not really convinced at the moment by Wolves and Everton. Arsenal have got Leicester and Everton. Liverpool have got Palace and Wolves. I think both of these teams have great fixtures. Either you should be selecting some in your wildcard in 23, definitely Arsenal, and then also creating plans or either selecting Liverpool players for that double in 25. And then finally, we've got 4 teams that blank in game week 25 due to the Carabao Cup final. That's Brentford, Man United, Newcastle and Brighton. Now, some of these teams have some of the best assets in FPL at the moment, so it's going to be very difficult to avoid their players. What I would say is you don't really want to have more than 2 players from these teams in your wildcard draft. And I'll take you through my suggestions for each of them. Okay, now we've got that out of the way, we can start talking through my pick of the players. And first up, my goalkeeper is Kepa. I think for me, Chelsea, they might not be scoring for fun, but they're looking really solid defensively now after the signing of Badiashile. They've kept 3 clean sheets on the bounce in the Premier League, which makes me think that Kepa is an absolutely fantastic pick in FPL. I think he's amazing value as well. He's still only 4.5 million, which I think for me justifies the price difference from Pope. I think Pope is now over 5 million. And also Chelsea have a great run of fixtures. If you look long term, beyond even the 5 game weeks that I'm showing on this screen, they've got some really nice fixtures where they don't really seem to play any of the top 6 teams. They also don't blank, importantly. When you compare them to Pope, Pope has what I'd argue are tough fixtures in 24, 25 and 26, where he blanks in 25. For that reason, I think Kepa is the outstanding goalkeeper at the moment in FPL. Okay, next up is the man I mentioned that seems to have completely transformed the Chelsea defence, and that's Badiashile. Now, he's not even in the Chelsea Champions League squad, which for me means he's absolutely nailed to start most games in the Premier League. And as I said when going through Kepa, he's kept 3 clean sheets in his first 3 Premier League games. For me at the moment, just looking at the pool of defenders available when selecting this wildcard draft, there aren't many that are properly attracting me, but Badiashile looks like a great option. You can just hold him all season long, and for 5 million, he's the cheapest starting Chelsea defender available. And you can see there his expected points over the next few game weeks. Now, next up, I've gone for Sven Botman. I know I said Newcastle don't have the best fixtures, but I think at 4.5 million, it's worth just selecting him, and then you can bench him in the blank and against Man City. And I do think, given the poor form that Liverpool are in, despite it being a tough fixture on paper, I think at home at St James's Park, Newcastle could well keep a clean sheet in that game. And for me, in 25 at 4.5 million, you can just bench him for that week. So Sven Botman makes it into my wildcard team. And then my final defender, because we're going for 3 at the back, is Akanji from Man City. For me, he seems to be the most nailed at the moment of all the Man City defenders. I know that's a dangerous statement to say, but he's really only missed minutes in 1 Premier League game this season. If you look there, I've got the clean sheet odds and expected points coming up. Man City have a great run of fixtures in terms of expected points. Obviously, the double in 23. There's a difficult game against Arsenal in there, but then they play Villa at home as their first fixture. Forest, Bournemouth, Newcastle, Palace. They've all got above 40%, in some cases, most cases above 50% chance of keeping a clean sheet. That means the algorithms suggest they're more likely than not to keep clean sheets in those fixtures. So for me, you've got to have a Man City defender, and my pick of them at the moment is Akanji. Now, my first pick from the midfield is Kevin De Bruyne. Post-World Cup, he's definitely not been lighting any fires, but for me, he's the most nailed to start of all the Man City mids. And after missing the Tottenham game, I think he's going to start both games against Villa and Arsenal. He's got 0.7 expected returns per 90, which is right up there with some of the top assets in the game, like Harry Kane, And Martin Odegaard. 0.19 expected goals, 0.51 expected assists. His expected returns are definitely more weighted towards assists. And for me, you have him because he's nailed and he can be a nice placeholder to buy Mo Salah in game week 25 when he has a double. For me as well, an interesting sort of strategic point on Man City is, in my opinion, to have any chance of winning the Premier League, they really have to go for their games now and try to win them, which for me means goals for Haaland and assists for Kevin De Bruyne. And for that reason, I think you've got to go with Kevin De Bruyne. Next up, I mentioned him previously, and that's Martin Odegaard. He leads the underlying numbers in terms of the Arsenal midfielders. He's got the best stats. He doubles in 23, doubles in 25, and he doesn't blank in game week 28 like we're expecting other teams to. He's on 0.62 returns per 90, close to Kevin De Bruyne's total, which is broken down at 0.32 expected goals and 0.3 expected assists. Those are great underlying numbers for a player of his price. And the fact, I think, now that he's the Arsenal club captain suggests that he's probably going to start most of the games in the upcoming game weeks. For me, he's one of the best Arsenal assets in the game, and I think you should pick him in your wildcard. Next up, another Arsenal midfielder in Bukayo Saka. For me, I believe he is the Arsenal's talisman, and he's on the penalties for them. 0.56 expected returns per 90, close but not quite Odegaard's total, broken down as 0.33 expected goals, 0.24 expected assists. Same as Odegaard, doubles in 23 and 25 and doesn't blank in 28. For me, of most games I've seen of Arsenal recently, both Odegaard and Martinelli have been subbed off relatively early in some of these games, but Saka's played them all. He seems to be the most nailed midfielder and gets the most minutes and hasn't been subbed off early. So for me, Bukayo Saka in my wildcard team. And then, despite his blank, I think it's really hard to ignore Marcus Rashford. He is in red-hot form at the moment. 11 goals in his last 11 games with 2 assists. Great fixtures and expected points totals all the way up through the fixtures for the rest of the season. Obviously, he blanks in 25, but I think 7.2 million, you're not going to be too disheartened to bench him in 25, and then you just bring him back for Liverpool away, which I think is a fixture he can do well in. I think at 7.2 million, Marcus Rashford offers absolutely outstanding value for his returns, and you simply have to pick him in your wildcard team. I'm just going to interrupt myself to remind you that if you're enjoying this video, to please leave me a like rating and subscribe to the Golden Goal channel. I'd really appreciate it, and it makes all my hard work worthwhile. Back to the video. On to the forwards now, and first up is Harry Kane. In my personal opinion, he's just become the second best asset in FPL. I think with the fixtures Kieran Trippier has coming up and the blank, I think Kane overtakes him as my second best asset in the game. He's had an outstanding season despite Spurs being, I'd say, largely poor for quite long periods. He's nailed, probably the most nailed outfield player in the Premier League. He plays 90 minutes every game and he takes the penalties. He's on 0.75 expected returns per 90. He might not have a double game week, but looking at those next 5 fixtures, I could quite easily see him scoring more than one goal in every single one of them. That's how good Harry Kane is at the moment. And for that reason, I think he's impossible to ignore for your wildcard. Next up is just the least surprising player on the list, really, Erling Haaland. He's the highest scoring player in FPL this season. I think he's on track to break the all-time FPL points record, as well as the Premier League in-season goal-scoring record. I think he's on track to beat that as well. He leads the expected points figures week on week, takes the penalties for Man City, doesn't seem to be getting rotated, and for me, he's just absolutely essential to have in your team, an absolute must in FPL, and especially this wildcard team. And then my final player of the 11 is Eddie Nketiah. I know Jesus probably has 3 to 4 weeks before he comes back into the side, but for me that takes you just until the end of the double in 25. He has the best underlying numbers of all the Arsenal attackers. Doesn't blank in 25. That's an old statistic. He doubles in 25 and he doesn't blank in 28. For me, he also gets less involved in the build-up play than Jesus does. He spends more time in the penalty box trying to get on the end of chances, which for me means he's probably got more attacking returns potential than Gabriel Jesus did when he was in the team. And yeah, just looking at those upcoming fixtures, as I said with Saka and Odegaard, he's impossible to ignore. And I think with this team, I'm trying to maximise the points from the Arsenal guys. I know defensively they're sound. I just think there's more upside from the 2 best midfielders and Nketiah. So that's why I've gone with this structure. Eddie Nketiah in my wildcard team. Then last up is just a view of how that team looks overall. As you can see there, it's expected to get 105 points in game week 23, which is just a ridiculous total, and probably alone justifies playing the wildcard ahead of time, really. But yeah, that's an insane points total, and it looks like a really exciting team. One little caveat I would say, team values at the moment for people are going to be all over the place. So I think most would be able to afford a team like this. But if you can't, I've got some alternative suggestions of players you can pick. So Mitoma, for example, could come in for Rashford, predicted to get very similar points, both blanking in 25. Mahrez is a genuine alternative to Kevin De Bruyne. His underlying numbers are better. His expected points are better. It's just his minutes might be a bit worse. And then Reece James as well. If you want an alternative to Badiashile with a bit better upside, I think Reece James is a great shout. All the attacking potential that he's got, combined with the same defensive potential as Badiashile. I think overall he's a better option. He just costs more money, and his expected minutes are probably a bit less. So yeah, that's my team, and those are the alternatives that I would suggest. And that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, found it useful. If you disagree with any of the players that I picked or think I should be picking others, please let me know in the comments. As I say in pretty much every video I make, I won't be offended if you've got a different opinion to me. This game is all about difference of opinion. Otherwise, it'd be really boring. And like I said, if you enjoyed the video, please do subscribe to the channel. Got plenty more FPL content coming your way towards the end of the season, including deadline streams, game week previews, you name it, I'll be making it. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.